Let's get started. How's it going, guys? Angus here from Makers Muse, and welcome to this very belated 200,000 subscriber special where I put out to you guys to ask me any questions you might have about the channel, or about me, or about my studies, or about how I run this day to day, and you delivered lots of questions. So I'm going to go through as many as I can in this video. I apologize if I don't get to your question. There was an awful lot. And I just recorded like heaps and realized the microphone was off. So let's go through it all over again. I definitely need that drink now. CB Turtle, I'm first. Notice me. You have been noticed. Chris is asking, what do you think of the 3D printing market if it's hit a plateau for printer features? Well, no, I don't think the 3D printing market has hit a plateau. I believe that 2017, we saw a race to the bottom thanks to large corporations like GearBest undercutting each other with printers and basically providing lots of very low-cost machines that could work with effort, but it was a bit of a mixed bag and they weren't really adding anything in terms of innovation. Then Prusa released dropped the Mark III, and that pretty much turned it all on its head. The Mark III has so much smarts in it, it's absolutely insane. It has all the features I ever wanted in the Mark II, so I think there's tons of innovation left, though I do believe we're reaching the limit of the quality you can get out of FDM 3D printing. I think that it's all going to come down to usability of that technology and making it easier. Then we're going to start to see other technologies that are better and making those easier, like resin. I still think resin's too messy for an individual home user at the moment and a bit too hard to use. But once that becomes easier and also lower cost, we'll start to see better quality prints at a price that the hobby market can afford. But no, I think we've got heaps of innovation left in the FDM hobby market. It's just going to be more on the usability side of things, not so much on the print quality. Mark Crane, where did you study in Perth? I didn't actually study in Perth. I studied at the University of Technology in Sydney. And backstory, after high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I did get into engineering at University of New South Wales, but I wanted to take a gap year, and my parents, being all-knowing, they're like, well, we don't want you stuffing around for a year. So I actually applied for an electronics apprenticeship at a company called Inventus in Caringbah. And I learnt an awful lot about how to run a company, how not to run a company, and I had a fantastic mentor who was a dual degree where he studied engineering and industrial design. So he saw my interests and what I was interested in doing, designing, and saw I had sort of a keen eye for it. He's like, look, Angus, you're wasted here doing this. Go apply for industrial design. So I learned all about it, figured out, went to University of Technology Sydney and saw their workshop. Absolutely blew me away. So I applied. I got into the degree because of my combat robot experience and knowing how to design with, actually at the time, Rhinoceros CAD is what I used to use. And not so much because of my high school certificate mark, because that wasn't that great, because I didn't really care. And I got in and had a fantastic 4 years at that university, basically going in even on the holidays to build things. And I learned tons, and that's where I first got to use hands-on 3D printers instead of just like knowing about it. But even then, back then, they were really expensive. But that's what I got into, and I absolutely loved that degree. It was the best degree. Doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Integrated Product Design, and it's only a 3-year degree. Very sad. NGLVZQZ. Cheap or expensive 3D printer? You should buy the 3D printer that you can afford. You don't want to cheap out if you can afford a better printer, because it all comes down to basically the three compromises. Cheap, fast, good. Basically, you can pick two. So you can have a machine that's cheap and good, but it won't be fast. You have to spend your time putting it together and tweaking it. But you can have a machine that's good and fast, you get it quickly, but it won't be cheap. So buy what you can afford, but keep in mind, if you buy a low-cost machine, you'll spend a lot of time getting it up and running versus buying a more expensive machine that will offer an out-of-the-box printing experience. Chris, do you know of the most successful 3D printing based startups that don't sell printers? Well, technically I am a startup, I suppose, and I work with 3D printers. That's probably not what you're asking. I honestly believe that the 3D printing on demand business model is flawed. It doesn't really scale. Like, best case scenario, you get an order for 1,000 prints. How do you fulfill that? Each print takes the same amount of time. So like, say 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, times 1,000. It doesn't scale like that. So I know it does work for very large corporations like Shapeways or iMaterialize. They use industrial sized machines to print on demand. And it's kind of where 3D Hubs has gone now. Unfortunately, it's not really there for hobbyists. But I don't even know if they're turning a profit. Shapeways for a long time had free shipping and they were making a loss to try to get the order volume up. So I don't know how they're going now. I definitely haven't been keeping a close eye. But I believe the most successful you can be with 3D printing in a startup is to offer education around it, not to offer printing on demand, which is what I've tried to do with this channel. Evan Byard, what do you think of the Monoprice Mini Delta and the SparkMaker SLA 3D printer? Well, I did see the Mini Delta in person when I went to the Maker Fair in Bay Area, and it looked like a pretty cool little machine, but I haven't used it personally. And the SparkMaker SLA, again, I've seen the campaign, I've seen the prints, but I am very wary of resin printers, especially that price point. I don't recommend resin printers to beginners because the resins are toxic, they're very messy, they're very hard to get right and tweak, and it's difficult to run a good resin system. So if you're choosing between the two and you have a very limited budget, I'd probably go with the Delta because FDM is a lot easier to get going rather than SLA. But if you can get SLA working and you're willing to take a risk and you have like the proper safety precautions like gloves and a workshop area where you can make a mess, yeah, maybe give it a shot. You'll get better resolution off the SLA than the FDM, that's for sure. Andre Carvey, always enjoying your edutainment. That's a good word actually. Thank you, I really appreciate it. And edutainment is something I haven't really considered, but I guess it is, yeah. I always try to educate rather than just making useless throwaway content. The Phil K, what do you think of the ANET A8? Well, it's one of the cheapest printers you can buy and has a massive community around it. That's what I think about it. Kyle Jameson, why did you leave Perth? It's still a really nice city. We even have Aldi and their 3D printers now. Look, I go back to Perth all the time to visit family and go for holidays, but for what I was doing with Maker's Muse, the writing on the wall was for me to go to Sydney. And there's a few reasons. One, I just like the weather better here. I just can't handle the hot, dry summers that Perth has. But it's also the distance. For me to get a printer shipped to me, to get it to Sydney is one thing. To get it to Perth is like a whole nother story. And it adds another week of delivery time. And it's when you have like this time to market system of making YouTube videos, sometimes you gotta be quick and you just physically can't. When I was working in the industry there, like we'd pay fortunes to get stuff flown up, and even then it would take over 24 hours with the most expensive option that the couriers offered. So unfortunately, I just saw the writing on the wall. I wanted to move to Sydney, but actually we're not even in Sydney now. We're actually in Wollongong because Sydney itself is a bit of a hole as well now because they're doing the light rail and etc. So where we are, I'm really happy. We've got fiber to the premises internet's blazing fast. And I'm really, really keen to knuckle down on this channel and grow it as big as it can be. Michael Grenier, what do you think of the Prusa printer farm? If you had to set up your own print farm, would you use the Mark II or the Mark III or another brand or style? Well, I think it's amazing for a start. Joe is just incredible what he's assembled. But I would say for any print farm, you would want removable print surfaces. Like, you'd absolutely 100% need it. So the Mark III would win that argument. But also, other printers I'd recommend for that system would be like the Yup Mini 2. Because the Yup Mini 2 has a bed that slides in and out, and you can just pull it out and scrape the parts off, or pop them off and put it back in. So I would probably have a mix of Mark IIIs and Yup Mini 2s, because both of them, like the Yup Mini 2s can network on their own software with Wi-Fi, and the Mark III, you can use Octoprint or you can use the SD card. But both of them would work well. Like you'd use the Mark III for large PETG or PLA prints and use the Mini 2s for smaller polycarbonate or ABS prints. That's what I'd do. Cats or dogs? Definitely cats. I love cats. I wish we could have a cat. We technically can. It's on the lease, but I don't want to get a cat then have to move. It's really a big commitment, and I'm also allergic to them, which does really suck because then I would be sneezing all the time. I'm keen to find out the hyperallergenic breeds. I really want a Bengal, like a big house with a Bengal, because apparently they're hypoallergenic, but we'll find out. Maybe in future. Maybe I'll have my own side cat channel like Linus does. I don't know. probably a while away. Whereas the Prusa Mark III review, well, it will come when it comes. Joe is fully aware that I take my time with reviews and I like to go into detail. My review will be very different to Tom's and Joe's 3D Maker Noobs. I have lots of things to touch on. Some things I like, some things I don't like, but overall it's very, very positive. Okay, Cool Crawler, can you do a tutorial on how to finish parts so they look injection molded without extra hardware? That's not really my thing. If you want to see someone put all the effort into finishing parts, go check out Bill Duran Punish Props. He's the king at finishing parts to make them look impeccable. If you want to cheat, I used to do acetone smoothing to ABS parts, which does smooth them over to make them look glossy. You can also do it with isopropyl alcohol and PVB filament, otherwise known as like Polysmooth. They have their own machine that does that. But really, the best way to finish your parts on FDM machines is good old-fashioned sanding. Takes forever, and Bill Punish Props, he's the king at doing that. I don't have the patience to do that. I just use my parts as they are, raw off the printer. Taylor Young, places to find 2020 extrusion without breaking the bank. I'm going to give you an Australian answer, obviously. I'm not sure if you're Australian, but it used to be really hard. It used to be really difficult to find, but now there's a guy on eBay called, I think, CNC and Cupcake World, I think he's called. It's a bit hard to find because all the Chinese listings like overpower him, but if you search for like lead screws or 2020 extrusion and search for him, he's in Melbourne. He does sell very, very reasonably priced 2020 and 2040 and etc. extrusion hardware. Decoder, I'm writing a paper on makers and considering using you as a case example. Would you like to read it once it's done? Yeah, sure. Absolutely keen. Thank you very much for considering me. Lachlan is asking, hey Angus, in regards to filament supply in Australia or countries surrounding, can you recommend anywhere? I have fairly recently gotten into 3D printing, but finding it hard to pull the trigger on several suppliers because it's so costly and takes so long for something to arrive. Yeah, okay. So for a start, JCar can get stuffed. They're hugely overpriced. I don't ever go to JCar anymore. I'm sorry, I don't care if it's supporting local business. If you're in the ACT, you're not really close to anyone that I can recommend, but there is, for example, Hobby King. They're in New South Wales. That's where their New South Wales warehouse is. You'll get their filament for about 20 bucks a kilo, 25 maybe, plus shipping. Shipping may be higher. There is Jamie 3D Printer Gear. He's in South Australia or Melbourne. I'm sorry, Jamie. There is also Kingdom 3D, who does eSun. They're in Queensland. And there's Aldi, who recently had the 3D printer. So if you go on to the Cocoon Create website, you can actually buy the Aldi PLA filament from them directly with shipping, but it is $35 a kilo. It can be quite difficult to get filament. I must admit, I'm blessed by running a channel. I get filament thrown at me. I haven't had to buy it for a very long time, but when I do buy it, I personally get it from Hobby King just because their warehouse is so close to me. So shipping will be a major consideration for you to get filament because, yeah, a kilo of filament, it's a pain in the ass to ship. Those stupid 3 kilo satchels that Australia Post has, they fit one roll. Great. What am I going to do with the other 2 kilos? Logic Tech Rat Lab, what do you think of 3D printed spools? I don't think it's a good idea. Well, I think it's a pretty good idea to stop plastic waste, but I do understand the hesitation that shipping a sort of loose coil of filament is much more difficult than shipping a protected spool. Though personally, I would love to reuse spools because I have just a massive pile of them. I don't know what to do with them because you can't really recycle them because they're not really marked and they've got screws in them or glue. I like the idea of 3D printing a spool with recycled filament. That really does it for me. Or cardboard spools. I'm totally okay with cardboard spools. They used to be pretty crap, but now some companies do them really well. I would personally prefer cardboard spools than having any sort of plastic, but I think 3D printed spools is the right direction to stopping this stupid waste of plastic when we come to running out of filament on spools, because I have piles. I don't know what to do with them. Sid's Balloons, what was your first 3D printer? My first personal 3D printer was an Up Mini. The first Up Mini, when they first came out, I pre-ordered it from 3D Printing Systems here in Australia. It cost me about $1,300, which is a lot of freaking money for a broke university student. It wasn't in high school. Wouldn't have been able to afford it in high school. But it did pay itself off in the first semester versus using their Stratasys systems and paying them cost price for filament. So I still have that machine downstairs. I've been planning to do a new series based around it and other old machines. But yeah, it still works perfectly. It was a really good buy, absolutely. Danny's asking, if you have a long piece, what's the best way to split the model and glue the pieces together? I have a whole tutorial on how to do that. You can check it out here. Alex Brent, with the Cocoon Create being in Aldi again, my local stores still have plenty of stock. Do you think hobby level 3D printers in Australia are still growing? I actually think the CR10 may be the reason, however. So yeah, to answer that question, I believe we've reached the saturation point. Ideally, again, going back to the Up Mini I've got, it still works. And I only have other printers because people send them to me to review. If I didn't have to buy one, I'd probably only have like 2 or 3. If I had to purchase them myself. So if you've bought the original Cocoon Create, I've still got it, it still works. So I think we've reached saturation point, and I think you're right, a lot of people bought from GearBest and they've now got machines. Unfortunately, the negative side to that is a lot of people were probably burnt by crap machines or kits, and now they think 3D printing is a waste of time and they're not going to consider another machine. I think that's happened to a lot of people. It certainly happened to a lot of schools I've visited where they've got machines that just sit idle and they're not considering upgrading to another machine because they just think 3D printing is a waste of time rather than actually considering that maybe it was the machine they bought, and the new ones, especially the recent one from Aldi, which was really good, might be far superior. So I do believe it's a mix of saturation and a few people have been burned. Have you printed an RC aeroplane? If so, have you flown it? No, I have not. I do not fly remote control things. I build combat robots because I smash them and I would smash the plane instantly. I'm currently working on designing a 3D printer that will eventually be part of my new 3D printer company. What tips do you have so I don't end up like another trashy Prusa knockoff company? I'll be completely blunt and honest. I don't think the world needs another low-cost 3D printer right now. You're up against massive competition. You're going to struggle. I would recommend using your knowledge to do something a little bit similar, but not the same as another 3D printer. Maybe CNC. I think CNC might be the next big thing, but we don't need another 3D printer, especially on Kickstarter. Everyone's burnt with Kickstarter. No one trusts it anymore. Sorry. Waldo, have you ever considered building a giant printer from scratch, like 4 by 8 feet with a 1 to 2 millimeter nozzle? No, I definitely don't have the room for that. I would like to do something crazy, but not that crazy. Definitely don't have the space. Jacob, what 3D printer would you recommend to someone who has never 3D printed before and still makes good prints? We didn't mention a budget, so I'm going to go for the Cubicon single, which is fantastic. It's $5,000 Australian. John, what criteria do you feel is necessary before 3D printer ownership should be seriously considered? I would apply the thinking like this. I would be like, okay, do you want 3D printers as a tool or a hobby? And this is what I ask people when they talk about buying a kit, for example. Are you interested in the idea of tweaking and tinkering on something, or are you interested in the idea of actually producing physical objects? And if so, what objects would you want to produce? Like, is it just knickknacks and toys? Does the idea of printing something interest you in that regard? Or is it further than that? Do you want to design a new invention? Do you want to print your favorite models and that you can't buy and expand like your wargaming selection? Or print parts for your car because that's your passion? Then those are all valuable reasons to get a 3D printer. But I don't recommend buying a 3D printer if it's just kind of an interest and you're like, well, yeah, I don't really want to learn 3D modeling. I just want to just buy and print stuff that I download off the internet and because then if you're not really passionate about it, when you get your first failed print or you have to level the bed and it's frustrating, you just won't have the drive. But if you're interested in tinkering, that's a bit different. 3D printers are a great tinkering tool. You can tinker to your heart's content, making them better and improving them. So that's also another viable reason to get a 3D printer. But don't buy it just because it's kind of interesting. You will probably end up not using it. Matthew's asking, what was the one thing you've always wanted to make or design? I don't need it, but I do really want to design my own 3D printer. I did, back in university, design a cupcake icing 3D printer or cake icing 3D printer. I kind of want to remake that. Back then, I was just learning. I had to hack firmware to make it work. It was very early days. There was hardly any support for that kind of thing. Now, I think I could make it work. But I don't know how useful it would be. I mean, it just pipes out icing and patterns. But I'd like to do that, or even just an FDM machine that is my own. If not just to prove to the haters that I actually know what the hell I'm talking about. I don't really need to prove anything, but kind of want to. Cool Crawler, can you mix more 3D printing with electronics, example for drones, RC cars, little projects and stuff? I'm definitely going to do some robotics, and I think someone was mentioning combat robotics. Look out for more combat robot stuff on the channel. I'm definitely doing an Antweight, don't worry. An Antweight is coming. I will definitely be doing more of that sort of stuff in future. I am passionate about combining, 3D printing as a tool to combine my interests, and I am interested in combat robotics and that kind of thing. Remote control is very interesting to me, teleoperated stuff. I don't do autonomous stuff. I don't do autonomous robots, but I do want to do like, an underwater drone, for example, that is teleoperated and can go check out fish down in the local bay. That'd be cool. Something like that, definitely. If only I had more time. Oleg's asking for a novice, what's the right way to configure a 3D printer in order to best configure temperature, retract that? Okay, so every print is different. I can't really do that for you. It's a trial and error method. And I would start with defaults, and I have lots of videos on my 3D Printing 101 series on how to tune retract, how to figure out your printing strength, how to figure out what the best layer height is for you. They are based, a lot of them, around Simplify 3D, but they are transferable to other free slices. It's just, changing where you fill in the boxes kind of thing. But then just trial and error, and then write down your progress. I've said this many times. Write down what you do so you know what you can change to and you know what works and what doesn't. Secondly, about 3D modeling, you're asking about SolidWorks. I can't show SolidWorks because I don't own it and I have to buy it, and I'm not going to buy it because it's like $10,000 Australian, which is why I show Fusion 360, and I have the Fusion 360 CAD for Newbies series right here, which is the best I can do for the audience that I have, which is people who aren't going to spend $10,000 on a modeling package. And although I did learn SolidWorks in university, I had it for free at that period of time because I was a student. That period of time has now ended. And unless they want to sponsor me on the channel, it's not going to happen. Evan asked, after all, using all the printers you've used, which one is your favorite? What's your favorite color, and what's the airspeed of velocity of an unladen swallow? Okay, so my favorites, I don't have one. I can't name just one favorite. I love my original Up Mini, and I do like the Up Mini 2 generation of that. And again, I like the Cetus. I know lots of people don't like the Up printers, but they print well. I really like the Qidi Tech X1, actually. Like, no one even knows about that printer. I reviewed it. It's a little sheet metal machine. I actually just recently gave it away, and I was really upset doing that. But I love that little machine. It was really quite good. Favorite color, probably purple. I quite like purple, although I print pink quite a lot, so I'm not sure what that says. What's the airspeed of velocity of an unladen swallow? They probably go at least 10 meters a second, I'd probably say. Bryce is asking, Angus, what's the most interesting item you've prototyped? Not sure if it's good interesting, but when I was working in Perth, we prototyped a anti-theft box for the beach that had a big screw that you would screw into the sand in a box that would collapse. And I had to like design it from scratch. And we actually printed the screw, it was this big, and the guy specified pink. So it was like a screw this long with huge threads, pink, with like you screw it into sand. That was probably the best thing I've prototyped. That was pretty funny. But I've done loads of stuff for myself, but not nearly as interesting as a huge pink screw, let's be honest. And that's gonna do it, guys, for the Makers Muse 200,000 subscriber Ask Me Anything special. Thank you so much for watching. It's been an absolute blast answering your questions. I couldn't get through all of them, I am sorry. There was a lot. And again, just wanna say a huge thank you to all of you for watching the videos, subscribing, talking about the channel to other people who are interested in 3D printing. Again, it's my thing. I aim to empower your creativity with 3D printing, and I will be doing other things in future, but it will always be around that mantra of empowering your creativity. I want to help you find your interests and grow your skills, and hopefully, get an awesome job doing it, because I love what I do doing this. And, I couldn't be doing this without you. So thank you so much. And if you're new to Makers Muse, which is unlikely if you're watching this video, then please consider subscribing, because I'd love you to. Yes, I don't know what to say anymore. Thank you for watching, guys. It's now pissing down with rain. I'm going to go chill, and I look forward to seeing you again very shortly here on Makers Muse. Catch you later, guys. Bye. No, stop.